the rain came down like the sky was punishing Lagos. Amara pressed her back against the cracked wall of a closed shop, trying to shield her baby from the downpour. Her toes curled against the cold concrete, the soles of her feet split open from walking barefoot for weeks. The baby, tiny, too tiny for 6 months old, let out a weak cry against her chest. "Shh, Adana," she whispered, rocking gently. Her voice cracked. "Mama knows. Mama knows." Across the flooded street, a woman in a clean yellow wrapper hurried past, holding a polythene bag of groceries high above the dirty water. The smell of freshly fried akara from a nearby stall made Amara's stomach twist. She hadn't eaten since. When was it? 2 days ago? That half slice of bread a street hawker had tossed her way before shooing her off. She watched through the rain as people rushed by. Men in suits jumping over puddles, market women balancing trays on their heads, Okada riders splashing through the floods. No one looked at her. Not really. She'd become part of the street furniture, another piece of urban decay to step around. Then the baby coughed, that deep, wet cough that had been getting worse. Amara pressed her lips to Adana's hot forehead and felt her heart stutter. Fever. Again. "Please," she whispered to no one. To God. To the universe that had stopped listening months ago. The rain fell harder. A black Mercedes G-Wagon pulled up to the curb, its tires sending a wave of dirty water onto the sidewalk. Amara instinctively turned away, shielding Adana from the splash. The tinted window rolled down. "Are you trying to kill that child?" The voice was deep, calm, not unkind, but not gentle either, the kind of voice used to being obeyed. Amara looked up into the face of a man who belonged on billboards. Smooth, dark skin, sharp cheekbones, eyes that missed nothing. His crisp white shirt looked impossibly clean against the gray misery of the street. She opened her mouth, but no words came. What could she say? That she had nowhere dry to go? That the last shelter had turned her away because she couldn't pay the 200 naira fee? That her own aunt had called her a disgrace and slammed the door in her face when she'd shown up pregnant at 18? The man's gaze dropped to her feet. "You're bleeding!" Amara looked down, a thin trail of red mixed with the rainwater between her toes. She hadn't even noticed. "The ground is..." She swallowed. "The ground is sharper than people." For 3 heartbeats, there was only the sound of rain hitting metal. Then the car door clicked open. "Get in!" Amara froze. Men in expensive cars didn't stop for girls like her, unless they wanted something. She'd learned that lesson the hard way 9 months ago, behind her secondary school, with a boy who'd promised to love her. The baby coughed again, a rattling sound that seemed to come from deep in her tiny chest. The man's jaw tightened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. Real cotton, monogrammed with what looked like gold thread. "For her," he said, nodding at Adana, "before she catches pneumonia." Amara stared at the white fabric. It had been so long since anyone had offered her anything clean. The back door opened. A blast of cool, dry air hit her face. The seats looked like butter-soft leather. She could smell the new car scent mixed with something woody and expensive. His cologne, maybe. "Last offer," the man said. "I'm not in the habit of sitting in the rain." Adana whimpered. Amara's arms ached from holding her so tight. She took 1 step forward, then another. The car seat felt like a dream beneath her as she sank into it. Water dripped from her clothes onto the pristine leather, spreading in dark stains. She waited for the shout, the recrimination, The man simply closed the door and walked around to the driver's side. As he slid in, he tossed a thick blanket into the back seat. "Wrap her up, then tell me your name." The blanket was the softest thing Amara had touched in months. As she carefully swaddled Adana, she realized her hands were shaking. "Amara," she whispered. "My name is Amara." The man nodded, putting the car in gear. "Kenechukwu Mba, but my friends call me Kene." The wipers swished against the windshield as they pulled away from the curb. Amara watched through the rain-streaked window as the street, her street for so long, disappeared behind them. She should have felt relief, but all she could think was, "What does he want from me?" Because in her 19 years of life, Amara had learned one truth above all others. Nobody does something for nothing. Not in Lagos. Not in this life. The baby sighed against her chest, already breathing easier in the warm, dry air. Amara pressed her lips to Adana's forehead and watched the city blur past. Whatever was coming, she'd survive it. She had to. When the rain falls on the leopard, it wets its spots, but does not wash them away. The car hummed through Lagos's flooded streets, its air conditioning drying the rainwater in Amara's hair. She sat stiffly, afraid to move too much, afraid her damp clothes would ruin the leather seats. Adana had stopped coughing, her tiny body finally warm against Amara's chest. Keen drove with one hand on the wheel, the other tapping rhythmically against the gear shift. The silence between them grew heavier with each passing kilometer. "Where are we going?" Amara finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "My place in Ikoyi." Amara's breath caught. Ikoyi, where ambassadors lived, where security guards saluted Range Rovers at gated communities, where girls like her got arrested for loitering. The car turned onto the Lekki Ikoyi Bridge, the water glittering below them like shattered glass. Amara pressed her face to the window, watching the slums disappear behind them. It felt like crossing into another world. Keen's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his jaw tightened. "Don't answer that," he muttered to himself, tossing it into the console. The penthouse elevator opened directly into his living room, a vast space of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Lagos skyline. Amara stood frozen in the doorway, her bare feet sinking into carpet thicker than any mattress she'd slept on in months. A middle-aged woman in a neat uniform emerged from another room. "Oga Kini, you're back early!" Her words died when she saw Amara. "Grace, this is Amara. She'll be staying with us for a while." Kina didn't explain further. "Draw a bath for her, please, and find something clean for her to wear." Grace's eyes traveled from Amara's matted hair to her bleeding feet. Something flickered in her expression. Not quite pity, but close. "Yes, Oga." The bathroom was bigger than the shack Amara had shared with 3 other market girls. Steam rose from the marble tub, the scent of lavender oil hanging in the air. Amara hesitated before undressing, her fingers trembling at the buttons of her stained blouse. The water burned at first, stinging the cuts on her legs and feet. She sank deeper, watching the dirt swirl away from her skin. Adana splashed happily in a basin nearby, her cough already easing in the warm steam. Grace returned with folded clothes, a simple cotton dress that looked brand new. "From Oga's sister," she said. "She leaves things here sometimes." Amara touched the fabric, software unworn. "Why is he doing this?" Grace paused at the door. "Oga Kine has his reasons." That night, Amara lay awake in the guest room, Adana curled against her chest. The bed was softer than anything she'd ever felt, but sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the penthouse made her tense. At 2:17 a.m., she heard raised voices. "Completely irresponsible! Do you know what people will say?" A woman's voice, sharp with anger. Amara crept to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. "I don't care what people say." Keen's voice was low, controlled. "You should." Not even 6 months since the scandal, and now this. A street girl? In your home? "Enough, Neka." A chair scraped. "You think I don't know why you brought her here? You're trying to atone. But bringing home strays won't change what happened." Amara didn't hear Keen's response. She backed away from the door, her heart pounding. Atone? Scandal? The next morning, Grace served breakfast on the terrace. Fresh fruit, warm akara, golden yellow yam porridge. Amara ate slowly, afraid her shrunken stomach would rebel. Keen joined her, dressed for work in a tailored navy suit. He didn't mention the nighttime argument. "I've arranged for a doctor to see Adana today," he said, pouring coffee. Amara's spoon froze midair. "Why?" "Because she's sick." He met her eyes. "And because it's what decent people do." The words stung. Amara looked down at her plate. "I would have taken her to a hospital if I could afford it." "I know." Keeney sighed. "Amara, look at me." When she did, she saw something unexpected in his face. Not pity, but recognition. Like he understood her shame down to his bones. The doctor arrived at noon. While he examined Adana in the guest room, Amara wandered the penthouse, running her fingers over bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes and framed photos. One photo caught her eye, a younger Keeney in a football jersey, arms around a laughing woman with the same sharp cheekbones. Both wore wedding rings. His wife! Amara spun around. Grace stood in the doorway, holding a stack of fresh towels. "Where is she?" Grace's mouth tightened. "Dead. Car accident last year." She nodded at the photo. She was 7 months pregnant when it happened. The pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. The argument, the scandal Neka had mentioned, Kine stopping for a homeless girl with a baby. Amara's stomach turned. She wasn't a person to him. She was a penance. The doctor emerged with Adana in his arms. "She has pneumonia," he said gently. "But we caught it early. With proper treatment, she'll recover fully." Keen nodded, already reaching for his checkbook. "Whatever she needs." Amara took her baby back, holding her tighter than necessary. She studied Keen's face, the careful blankness when he looked at Adana, the way his fingers twitched when the baby coughed. That night, when the penthouse was quiet, Amara packed the few things Grace had given her into a plastic bag. She couldn't stay here. Not once she understood. The front door was locked, keycard access only. Going somewhere? Keen stood in the hallway, silhouetted by the city lights through the windows. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket anymore, just a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Amara noticed the scars then, thin white lines crisscrossing his left forearm. "You should have told me," she said quietly. "Told you what?" "About your wife, about why you really brought me here." Keen's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes darkened. "It's not what you think." "Isn't it?" Amara adjusted Adana in her arms. "I may be poor, but I'm not stupid. You don't care about me. You care about easing your guilt." For the first time, Keen looked genuinely angry. "You think this is about guilt?" He stepped closer. "I stopped because I saw a girl who reminded me of someone who didn't get help when she needed it. Your wife. My sister. Amara froze. Keen ran a hand over his face. 10 years ago. She was 17. Got pregnant. Our father threw her out. She ended up... He didn't finish. I looked for her for months. By the time I found her... The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Amara thought of her own aunt slamming the door, of sleeping under bridges, of the way men had looked at her when they realized she had no one to protect her. I'm sorry, she whispered. Keenan nodded. Then, quietly, stay. At least until Adana is better. Amara looked down at her daughter's face, flushed with fever. She thought of the streets, the rain, the hunger. She nodded. The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. The penthouse smelled of antiseptic and baby formula. Amara paced the length of the guest room, Adana's tiny body burning against her chest despite the antibiotics. Outside, Lagos glittered, a million lights stretching to the horizon, each one marking someone who wasn't staring down the barrel of losing their child. Grace entered with a tray of food that Amara wouldn't touch. You need to eat, NWA, the housekeeper chided. How will you care for her if you're skin and bones? Amara's stomach growled, but the thought of swallowing anything made her nauseous. What if the medicine doesn't work? Before Grace could answer, the doorbell chimed. Voices filtered down the hallway, Keen's deep baritone and a woman's sharp, cultured accent. Who is... Grace's hand clamped on Amara's wrist. Oga's mother. Don't go out there. But it was too late. The bedroom door swung open, revealing a woman who could only be Keen's mother. Same proud cheekbones, same effortless elegance, except where Keen's eyes held quiet pain. Hers were polished marble. Cold, unreadable. Mrs. Mba took in the scene with one sweeping glance. The medicine bottles on the nightstand, Amara's borrowed dress hanging loose on her frame, Adana's labored breathing. So? She didn't greet them. This is your charity case. Keen appeared behind his mother, his expression tight. Mama, this isn't the time. I'll decide when it's time. Mrs. Mba stepped closer, her designer perfume overwhelming the scent of sickness. Do you know what people are saying? That my son has taken in some roadside girl and her bastard child? The word hit Amara like a slap. She instinctively curled around Adana, shielding her from the woman's gaze. Keen moved between them. Enough! His mother ignored him, addressing Amara directly for the first time. How much? Amara blinked. Ma? Don't play stupid. It doesn't suit you. Mrs. Mba opened her crocodile skin purse. How much to take your child and disappear? The room tilted. Amara's vision swam with spots of black and red. She'd been poor her whole life, but no one had ever made her feel disposable until this moment. Keen's voice turned dangerous. Mama, leave! Mrs. Mba sighed, as if dealing with a petulant child. Kenechukwu, must we do this again? First it was university fees for strangers, then that ridiculous women's shelter donation. This isn't a donation. Keen's shout startled Adana awake. The baby's weak cry filled the tense silence. Her child could die. And what will you do when she's well? Mrs. Mba countered. Keep them? Play house with some gutter rat and her... Amara moved before she realized it. The slap echoed off the marble floors. Mrs. Mba touched her cheek, more shocked than hurt. No one spoke, no one breathed. Then Kine did something unexpected. He laughed. A short, sharp burst of laughter that seemed to surprise even him. Get out, Mama, he said, still grinning. Before she hits you again. After his mother left in a whirl of offended dignity, Keen collapsed into an armchair, running both hands over his face. I should apologize for her, but I won't. Amara's knees gave out. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor. Adana clutched to her chest. She's right, though. About what? About what happens after. Amara looked up at him. I can't stay here forever. Keen studied her for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to his study, returning with a folder. These are job listings. There's a nursery here in the building where Adana can stay while you work. The apartment 2 floors down is vacant. Amara stared at the papers, then at him. You're giving me an apartment? Renting, he corrected. You'll pay me back when you get a job. He hesitated. There's one more thing. He slid a business card across the coffee table. Lagos State University, Adult Education Program. Amara's throat closed up. She hadn't stepped foot in a classroom since her aunt pulled her out of secondary school. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing all this? Keen looked out the window at the city below. Because someone should. That night, after Adana finally fell into a peaceful sleep, Amara wandered the penthouse. She found Keen on the balcony, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the lights of Victoria Island. Couldn't sleep? He asked without turning around. Amara joined him at the railing. I keep thinking this is a dream, that I'll wake up back under that market stall. Keen took a sip of his drink. It's not a dream. Silence stretched between them, comfortable this time. The city hummed below, alive with its own rhythm. Tell me about your sister, Amara said quietly. Keeny's grip tightened on his glass. Her name was Kioma. She was sunlight personified, always laughing. He swallowed hard. When our father disowned her, I didn't fight hard enough. By the time I tracked her to a brothel in Benin, Amara didn't press. Some wounds were too fresh, even years later. She had a baby too, Keeny continued after a moment. A little girl. I never found out what happened to her. The unspoken words hung between them. I failed her, just like you think you're failing Adana. Amara surprised herself by reaching for his hand. Their fingers tangled together over the railing, 2 broken people staring down at a city that had tried to crush them both. 3 days later, Amara stood in the lobby of a high-rise office building, wearing the only blazer Grace had been able to find in Keen's sister's closet. The job interview lasted 12 minutes. We'll call you, the HR woman said, without looking up from her computer. Amara knew what that meant. She was on her 5th rejection when her phone buzzed with a message from Keen. Stop by the Polo Club before heading home. I have a surprise. The Lagos Polo Club was everything Amara wasn't. Polished, privileged, dripping with old money. She hesitated at the entrance. Adana strapped to her chest in a borrowed baby carrier, painfully aware of her second-hand shoes. Then she saw Keen across the field, deep in conversation with an older white man. Before she could approach, a woman blocked her path. Early 30s, flawless makeup, wearing a dress that cost more than Amara's childhood home. You must be the project, the woman drawled, looking Amara up and down with a smirk. Amara straightened her shoulders. Excuse me? Keen's little rehabilitation case. The woman sipped her champagne. Don't look so surprised. Everyone knows. The question is, what happens when he gets tired of playing hero? Amara's face burned, but before she could respond, Keen appeared. Amara! He took her elbow, steering her away. Ignore Ngozi. She's bitter because I turned down her marriage proposal last year. The surprise turned out to be a job. not as a secretary or cleaner, but as assistant manager at the white man's new tech startup. Mr. Dawson needs someone bilingual with street smarts, Keen explained over lunch. Someone who understands the real Lagos, not just the boardroom version. Amara stared at the contract, the numbers blurring. The salary was more than her aunt made in a year. I don't know anything about tech. Dawson chuckled. I can teach you coding. I can't teach you how to survive Lagos. He nodded at Adana. Anyone who can keep that one alive on the streets can handle our clients. As they left the club, Keen's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. I have to take this. Amara waited near the parking lot, bouncing a fussy Adana. That's when she saw them. Two familiar figures lurking near the club's service entrance. Her breath caught. Emeka and Ifeoma, her cousin and aunt. The same ones who'd thrown her out 9 months ago. Ifeoma spotted her first. Her eyes widened, then narrowed as she took in Amara's clean dress, the baby carrier that wasn't threadbare, the way the valets nodded respectfully as she passed. Amara turned to flee, but it was too late. Well, well, Ifeoma called loudly enough for nearby patrons to hear. Look who's risen from the gutter. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. The Polo Club's manicured lawns seemed to tilt beneath Amara's feet. Ifeoma's voice, that familiar mix of vinegar and venom, cut through the polite chatter of wealthy club members like a knife through suya meat. Auntie, Amara whispered, instinctively curling her body around Adana. The baby squirmed against her chest, picking up on her sudden tension. Ifeoma strode forward, her cheap synthetic gel wobbling with each step. Emeka trailed behind, his once menacing frame now gaunt from whatever drugs he'd been spending Amara's stolen school fees on. Look at you, Ifeoma sneered, loud enough for nearby socialites to pretend not to eavesdrop. Dressed like a proper madam now. Who's the baby's new father? Some old white man? Or do they take turns? Enough. Keen materialized at Amara's side, his hand warm against the small of her back. His phone was still clutched in his other hand, the screen cracked from whatever call had made him storm off minutes earlier. Ifeoma's eyes widened at the sight of him, his tailored suit, the watch that probably cost more than their entire street in Ajagunle. Her mouth curled into something between a smile and a snarl. Oh, I see now. You found yourself a rich fool to... Mrs. Mba, Keen's voice could have frozen the champagne in nearby glasses. I suggest you leave before security escorts you out. The use of Mrs. was deliberate, a reminder that he knew exactly who she was. Ifeoma bristled, but Emeka grabbed her arm, nodding toward the approaching security guards. This isn't over, Ifeoma hissed as they retreated. Blood is blood, my daughter. You'll remember that soon. The ride back to Ikoyi was silent, except for Adana's occasional whimpers. Keen's knuckles stayed white on the steering wheel long after they'd left the club behind. Who were they really? He finally asked as they pulled into the penthouse garage. Amara stared at her reflection in the tinted window, the girl from the slums wearing another woman's designer dress. My aunt and cousin, after my parents died, they took me in. And threw you out when you got pregnant. It wasn't a question. Amara nodded anyway, remembering the sting of Ifeoma's slap when she'd confessed her pregnancy. After all I've done for you? You're just like your mother. No morals, no sense. Keen killed the engine, but didn't move to exit. That phone call earlier, it was about Kiyoma's daughter. Amara turned sharply. You found her? Not yet, but I have a lead. His jaw worked. There's a private investigator in Benin City who thinks... The elevator dinged, cutting him off. Grace stood waiting in the foyer, wringing her hands. "Olga, you have visitors!" Her eyes darted to Amara. "From the village!" The living room smelled of expensive perfume and old resentment. Mrs. Mba sat ramrod straight on the leather sofa, flanked by two men Amara didn't recognize. One in priest's robes, the other in a police uniform. Kene went very still. "Mama, what is this?" Mrs. Mba ignored him, addressing Amara directly. "I understand we got off on the wrong foot." She gestured to the coffee table, where a thick envelope bulged with what could only be cash. "This is for you. Enough to start a new life. Anywhere but here." Amara's mouth went dry. She'd seen this movie before, the rich family paying off the problem, but the priest's presence confused her. Keen stepped forward. "If you think, not for that," Mrs. Mba snapped. She took a breath, composing herself. "For the child." Silence. Amara's arms tightened around Adana. "What?" The priest spoke for the first time, his voice gentle but firm. "My child, surely you see this situation is unnatural. A young girl like you, alone in the world with a baby. And Kenechukwu, a grieving widower." His gaze flickered to Keen's scarred forearm. "People will talk. Already they're saying..." "That's enough." Keen's voice was dangerously quiet. "Get out, all of you." Mrs. Mba stood, her composure cracking. "You stubborn boy. Have you forgotten the scandal after Uchi's death? The rumors, the investigations? Now you bring this street girl into our home and expect..." "What I expect," Keen said through clenched teeth, "is for my mother to stop treating human beings like inconveniences to be bought off." The policeman cleared his throat. "There is another matter." He nodded toward Adana. "The child's birth certificate, or lack thereof." Ice flooded Amara's veins. In the chaos of homelessness and survival, she'd never registered Adana's birth. "Without proper documentation," the officer continued, "there could be questions, especially if someone were to file a report." His meaningful glance at Mrs. Mba wasn't subtle. Keen looked ready to throw them all off the balcony. Instead, he took out his phone and dialed a number. "Dyke? Yes. I need you at the penthouse immediately. Bring your notary stamps." He paused. "No, this can't wait until Monday." Mrs. Mba's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. "Dyke Okoro? The commissioner?" The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Commissioner Okoro arrived with a team, turning Kine's dining table into an impromptu government office. Birth certificates were produced, signatures collected, all while Mrs. Mba watched silently, her earlier confidence wilting under the weight of real political power. By midnight, Adana had a birth certificate listing Amara as mother and the father's space conspicuously blank. The commissioner even backdated it to avoid penalties. As the last official left, Kine turned to his mother. "Satisfied?" Mrs. Mba said nothing, her gaze fixed on the new documents. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its edge. "You always were my most stubborn child." The next morning, Grace woke Amara with urgent shaking. "Nay, wake up! There's someone here to see you." The living room smelled of antiseptic and cheap soap. The woman sitting on Keen's Italian leather sofa couldn't have been older than 30, but life had carved lines into her face that made her look decades older. A faded UNICEF backpack sat at her feet, and beside her, a little girl. Maybe 4 years old, wearing a dress 2 sizes too big, her braids frayed at the ends. The woman stood as Amara entered. "You're the girl Kini saved." Her voice was raspy, like she'd smoked too many cigarettes or cried too many tears. "I'm Neka, Kioma's friend." Amara's breath caught. She looked at the little girl, really looked, and saw it. The same sharp cheekbones as Keen, the same stubborn set to the jaw. The woman noticed her staring. This is Ijeoma, Chioma's daughter. The child hid behind Neka's legs, peeking out with eyes too old for her face. Amara knew that look. She saw it every morning in the mirror. Keen appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas. When he saw Ijeoma, he froze like a man seeing a ghost. Neka didn't mince words. The brothel owner was selling her to a politician next week. I stole her back. She nudged the UNICEF bag with her foot. Chioma's things. What little was left. Grace made a small noise in her throat and hurried to take Ijeoma's hand. Let's get you bathed. Inyuoim, some nice warm stew. As they disappeared down the hall, Neka turned to Kini. She's yours now, but there's something you should know. She reached into her pocket and produced a battered photograph. The edges were burnt, the colors faded, but the image was clear. A younger Chioma, heavily pregnant, standing beside a familiar face. Amara gasped. Emeka! Kini took the photo, his hands shaking. Your cousin. Neka nodded. He visited Chioma often at first, brought money, promised to take her away. Then one day, he stopped coming. She looked at Amara with something like pity. Your aunt found out. Threatened to disown him if he didn't cut ties with his wayward sister. The pieces crashed together. Why Ifeoma had been so quick to throw Amara out, why she'd called her just like your mother. The shame ran deeper than one teenage pregnancy. Kine sank onto the sofa, the photo crumpling in his grip. All this time, she was right there. Amara thought of Emeka's sneer at the polo club, the way he'd eyed Adana like she was stolen property. A chill ran down her spine. They'll come for her, she said quietly. Now that they know you have Ijeoma. Kini looked up, his eyes hard. Let them try. When the moon shines, the thief becomes visible. The courtroom smelled of old wood and older lies. Amara sat stiffly in her borrowed blazer, watching Ifeoma weep crocodile tears for the judge. Our poor Chioma, her aunt wailed, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief. Taken from us too soon. All we want is to raise her daughter properly, among family. Keen's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Ebeli, leaned over to whisper, Watch this. She stood, heels clicking against the polished floor. Your Honor, if Mrs. Mba is such a devoted family guardian, why did she file for custody only after Mr. Mba took the child in? She dropped a stack of documents on the bench. Bank records show Mrs. Mba received monthly payments from the same brothel where Ijeoma was kept for 3 years. The gallery erupted. Ifeoma's face purpled. Lies! Judge Adebayo banged her gavel. Enough! She examined the documents, lips thinning. Mrs. Mba, explain these deposits. Amara barely heard the stammered excuses. Her attention was fixed on Emeka, slouched in the back row. Sweat glistened on his forehead despite the AC. His bloodshot eyes kept darting to Ijeoma, not with affection, but calculation. Kina reached over, squeezing Amara's hand. His palm was damp. It's almost over, he murmured, but it wasn't. The penthouse felt different that night, lighter, as if the walls had been holding their breath. Ijeoma slept curled beside Adana's crib, one small hand clutching the bars like she feared it might disappear. Kine poured 2 glasses of whiskey, pushing one toward Amara. To justice, he said bitterly. The judge had granted him permanent custody. Ifeoma faced fraud charges. Emeka had bolted before the verdict. Amara sipped, the alcohol burning her throat. They'll try again. Let them. Keen stared at the children. I won't lose another sister. The raw pain in his voice made Amara's chest ache. She thought of the photo Neka had brought. Emeka's smug smile, Kioma's hopeful eyes. Of all the ways men failed women every day, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Meet me at City Park, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Come alone. About Adana's father. The park was emptier than Amara expected. No joggers, no nannies with strollers. Just an old woman selling groundnuts by the fountain. Amara? She spun around. Emeka stepped from behind a tree, his designer shirt wrinkled, gold chains glinting against his dark skin. He looked like a man who'd been sleeping in his car. Where's Ifeoma? Amara kept one hand on her pepper spray. Police custody, not that you care. He smirked. But you'll care about this. He tossed a phone at her. The screen showed a paused video, a dimly lit room, a girl crying. Amara didn't need to press play to know what it was, to recognize her own screams. You filmed it, she whispered. Business opportunity. Emeka licked his lips. Your baby daddy is Chief Okon's son, rich boy, political family. They'll pay millions to keep this quiet. The world tilted. Chief Okon, the same politician Neka said had tried to buy Ijoma. Amara's voice came out strangled. You sold your own sister. Now you want to sell my child? Business is business. He reached for the phone. Tell Keen to... She was faster. The pepper spray hit him square in the eyes. As he howled, she brought her knee up, hard, between his legs. You'll never touch my daughter, she hissed, snatching the phone. Or Ijeoma. Keen found her vomiting in the penthouse bathroom. Amara? He knelt beside her, hands hovering. What happened? She showed him the video, watched his face go from concern to horror to murderous rage. I'll kill him. No. She grabbed his wrist. We go to the police. The real police. His laugh was bitter. You think Chief Okon's son will face justice? Not for this. Amara took a shaky breath. But for the brothel, for Ijoma, for all the others. She saw the moment he understood. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about breaking the cycle. The press conference made front-page news. Millionaire businessman exposes human trafficking ring. Keen stood at the podium, flanked by Amnesty International officials. Behind him, Amara held both children, her face hidden by oversized sunglasses. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. Mr. Mba, is it true the ringleader was your own cousin? Miss, are you one of the victims? Keen's voice never wavered. This isn't about my family. It's about every girl failed by a system that values money over lives. Later, at home, Ijoma asked to watch cartoons. Adana gummed a teething biscuit. The ordinary moments felt extraordinary now, precious because they'd almost been stolen. Mrs. Mba called as the sun set. Keen put her on speaker. You've ruined us, she hissed. Do you know how many contracts we've lost? The Okons were our biggest. Goodbye, Mama. Keen hung up. Amara expected him to cry, to rage. Instead, he picked up Ijoma and spun her around until she giggled. Hungry? He asked Amara over the child's laughter. She nodded, suddenly ravenous. Let's order pizza. 3 months later, Amara stood outside Lagos State University, her acceptance letter clutched in one hand, Adana babbling on her hip. Kine leaned against his car, grinning. Told you they'd take you. She rolled her eyes but couldn't stop smiling. The remedial program would be hard, juggling classes with work and motherhood. But for the first time, the future didn't terrify her. As they drove home, Kine cleared his throat. I've been thinking. about making things official. Amara's heart stuttered. "Not like that," he laughed. "Legally, I want to adopt Ijoma. And if you're comfortable with it, Adana too." The offer hung between them. Not salvation, but solidarity. A promise that no matter what happened, these children would never be alone. Amara looked at her daughter, at the man who'd become their unlikely guardian angel, and nodded. Yes. The city rushed by outside, noisy, messy, beautiful, alive with possibility. 5 years later, the photo on Keen's desk showed 4 smiling faces. A man in a graduation gown, his arms around a beaming woman holding a diploma. Between them, 2 little girls in matching yellow dresses, one gap-toothed and giggling, the other solemn-eyed, but finally, unmistakably safe. Beneath it, a handwritten note. Even the poorest water still makes a seed grow. A single stick may smoke, but it takes many to build a fire that lasts.